Alrighty, and we are live. If you give me a moment, I can go ahead and share this out, and then we will be able to get started. Let me go ahead and copy this link. I'm about to post it in case people are watching in a later date. That's why this is taking a second to get started. Pinging the Shuckle Premier League server. Yeah, we're just gonna do some quick power rankings. I don't have a crazy setup for this video. I just have the drafts page, as you can see here, and the tier maker that Joey made. Thank you to Joey for that. But we will be able to get started shortly. I'll let some people get in here now, and then we'll be able to really ramp things up in the near future. But almost any ability, my experience with it is very minimal. I have a short, not that short, but like call with Joey to kind of learn the ropes of things, and then we're really getting into the almost any ability for me, with this being my main primary experience for it. What's up, Bash? What's up, Obo? Good to have you guys in the chat. And yeah, we can go ahead and start discussing things. So for this season of Almost Any Ability Draft, there were 8 coaches that we have to look at. 8 coaches, meaning that there is a pretty small like pool of drafted Pokemon when it comes to this thing. So there's a lot of Pokemon that weren't drafted, things like the Landorus forms, Gengar with the ability to normalize, mean look, and like skill swap. I don't know if that was just like a gentleman's agreement. Nobody wanted to do that. But those are all things for us to consider here. And when we do look at this, we'll be able to look at the teams and how they can beat the rest of the league. Whereas in like last season when I was doing it, there was 20 teams. It was very challenging in order to, monitor every individual matchup. And instead I could look at things a little bit more holistically. This time, I actually get the chance to look at the matchups because everyone plays everyone minus one person. So we're able to really make sure that, like, oh, the first pick was Nexus's Qian Pao. We can look at the matchups and see, oh, Shuckle has Incineroar. That's a pretty good Qian Pao check in theory when it's able to come in on something like that and intimidated. Shuckle did keep Intim on his Incin, so that's like something that can resist Chen Pao stabs. Or like Joey's Tinkaton with Regenerator, that's going to jail Chen Pao theoretically for a bit. We do also have the fact that the coaches do have unlimited changes from week 3 onwards, or prior to week 3, rather, not week 3 onwards. So these abilities especially can get shuffled around the Pokemon too, but I actually know for a fact that a bunch of abilities will change. So I'll make sure to keep people posted on that once I start making the draft notes slides for us. But for now, we can go ahead and jump into things without stalling any longer. What's up, Faye? Good to have you in the stream. And now we can go ahead and look at Nexus's team because he's the first pick, starting with Chen Pao, adaptability and magic guard for the abilities, 2 incredible abilities on your ice dark type. Ursaluna with stamina and vessel of ruin. Skarmory with Intim and well-baked body. Guy sounds like a pain to take out. Regen plus volt absorb Primarina, that also sounds really good. Psychic Surge and Sheer Force Azelf, another incredible pick. Tinted Lens and Scrappy Slitherwing. I'm very fond of Slitherwing, having just came off the BBR with that guy. I think Tinted Lens is an incredible choice for that. Scrappy as well with the close combat. Fundy Eye with Primordial Sea and Beads of Ruin. Vileplume with Prankster and Corrosion. That's pretty cool. Alolan Sandslash with Sturdy and Flashfire. Pokemon that sounds pretty good in theory. And then Shadow Shield plus Technician Banette. I'm kind of, on the fence about how much I plan on respecting something like Alolan Sandslash and Banette to round out the draft. And kind of speaking of that, it's a bit rough when we're looking at like Alolan Sandslash as the primary remover for this team. So that's one thing. Next, overall, his hazards just aren't quite up to par with how I would want them to be, because still, in this almost any ability tier, um, the core of Pokemon is still important. You need to knock out your opponent's Pokemon before they knock yours out. And while a lot of teams do have, good ways of damage mitigation and good ways, especially with hazard control, a lot of them have like unblockable rapid spins with the use of abilities. As you can see, there's a lot of like Scrappy or Refrigerate rapid spin. That's a very big consideration for a lot of these coaches. But we can also just look at how Nexus individually matches up into a lot of the teams, specifically how his big threats take on other teams' big threats. So, for instance, Chen Pao, Shuckle has Incineroar. Incineroar is obviously liable to get worn down. And you have some good, like, Prim will always come in on Incineroar, so it's going to be a contested line for sure. But still, Chen Pao is going to do pretty well. He's going to do very well into every team, right? Just like adaptability is super strong. And Magic Guard also makes things more consistent. And then into Liv's team, she doesn't have an answer to the direct Chen Pao stabs, which is something to consider for sure. We're going to want to, note that things like Great Tusk with Thick Fat theoretically is a good answer, but it's still just like a neutral hit from Chen Pao. And adaptability boost, I believe, takes it slightly above where Sword of Ruin would hit, but then Thick Fat would take that down. So Great Tusk probably looking at like the best answer to that mon, but then we see just like still Ice plus Dark looks really good into the rest of the team. Suave's team, Suave is kind of Chen Pao food, right? He has Girder with, I guess Fluffy Girder probably just jailballs most Chen Paos. So that'll be interesting to see what happens in that matchup. But at the end of the day, it's also a Girder. And I really like just looking at these teams, the synergy between Chen Pao and Primarina, especially because it seems like a lot of these Chen Pao answers, just kind of Primarina is able to come in on them and flip turn out. Tinkaton maybe a little bit less so, with its ability to come in, and then Primarina kind of gets forced out, but we have like Ursaluna with Stamina, which seems like a very good answer to that thing. And for Stamina Ursaluna, one of the big things with Ursaluna is its incredible damage output with Facade. And I feel like, missing out on that damage will kind of hurt what Ursaluna's doing, but still, Stamina and Vessel Rune, that thing's going to be a pain to get rid of. Yeah, a way to boost your physical defense in matchups and a way to boost your special defense. And then I don't know. Just like looking at Nexus' team into a lot of these other ones, as of right now, it seems like there's a lot of Pokemon that he will also struggle with, right? Like, your Primarina is like a very good like regen pivot guy, but sometimes you're going to be forced to run that Volt Absorb. I'm looking at something like Hadron Engine Latios, where the Volt Absorb can come in clutch. Just like Hadron Engine being such a prevalent ability in this format is definitely something to consider. And I'm kind of surprised that Nexus opted for a team without any Hadron Engine users. It seems like just an incredible ability. I guess his electric type is off the ground. He doesn't really have like anything that would, super take use of Hadron Engine. It'd just be like Azelf kind of, which could have been a Hadron Engine user, but I like Psychic Surge on that guy a little bit more. So, I don't know, maybe it's just like I'm overvaluing that ability, but also like in the drafting phase, that's something to consider. And then other things to consider are like popular strategies in this league. We have a lot of the hard weather control with the Desolate Land and the Primordial Sea. As we see, Nexus has Primordial Sea with Thundy Eye. I like the teams that are able to splash both of them, just because you have a way to turn off both of your opponent's options for it. And so he can turn off any Desolate Lands. There are a lot of strong Desolate Land users in this draft. Just looking for them on the board real quick. Like Desolate Land, Ogerpon Hearthflame. With the Primordial Sea, it's actually a pretty decent switch in. Obviously, you have to like consider Turbo Blaze, but that doesn't really hit through the Primordial Sea regardless, I believe is how that interaction works. What are my other Desolate Land users? Maybe we just didn't draft as many Desolate Lands as I thought. Desolate Land Cinderace, that's a big one. Being able to come on that seems really nice. Desolate Land Entei, same thing. You're a bit more liable in that scenario with like getting Stone Edged compared to some of these other Desolate Land users. But I like that just like from a point of view for Nexus's team. But it just feels like it's lacking something. I don't know. Maybe it's because like Skarmory is one of your big like picks, but it just feels lacking, and it kind of almost feels like a 7-mon team, I believe. Yeah, because Chen Pao through Thundy seem like, and being a 7-mon team isn't necessarily bad, but when you're a 7-mon team that also these other like all of the low value Pokemon can still see a lot of usage. What's up, Zio? When these like lower value Pokemon still see like lesser usage, or not lesser, but they can see more usage, it's going to be something to consider for sure for these teams. So just like in general, I feel like a little bit low on Nexus team, but it still seems really strong. We got 5 tiers here. I don't foresee anything being below really good just due to the nature of this format. Maybe what we can do is try to do like a playoff prediction. Like instead of best, here's our league winner. And then here's the other finalist. And then here's playoffs. And then here's miss. And then D. D, we don't need D tier. Can I delete this? Perfect. Alrighty. So these 4 will be our predicted tiers. And we can definitely go ahead and like move things around once we get, but I just foresee Nexus having a lot of challenging matchups. And I like, I don't ever want to like say I don't want anyone to think that I'm like attacking any individual coach. This is just how I see the drafts is what I'm trying to say. But we definitely can come back and revisit things, but as of right now, just like looking at Nexus's matchups, I think it'll be a challenge for him to win a majority and be in that top 4 to make the playoffs for this league. Up next, we see Shuckle King. Shuckle took Golden Go, number 1. Everyone who had almost any ability experience was really, really hyping up Golden Go. And I think that's a great reason, for a great reason. And he picked 2 excellent abilities on it. Hadron Engine, which synergizes extremely well with what Golden Go is doing because bulky waters are often the best answer to Golden Go. Well, now they have to deal with Hadron Engine boosted Thunderbolts. Earth Eater's another really good one. He also could have gone with something like Magic Guard, which has very good utility with Steel Beam. But Earth Eater, turning an immunity or turning a weakness into an immunity, that's another very, very strong consideration and something that you're always happy to do. Unaware plus Pixelate Screamtail. That's a very good combination. He has 1 offensive and 1 defensive ability. Same with Gyapdos, Magic Guard plus Tough Claws, 1 offensive, 1 defensive ability. I was watching Callum's draft analysis, and he was talking about how he was applying that strategy to his draft, and I think it's a super strong strategy, which is now why when I'm looking at these teams, I'm kind of bringing that idea with me. So, for this next one, we have Ogerpon Wellspring, Swift Swim, and Primordial Sea. One's a Rain Abuser to go along with Drizzle Dragalge. Seems like a pretty interesting combination. Actually seems like a very, very good Drizzle setter for this Ogerpon, just like the offensive synergy. I'll touch on it more when I get to the Dragalge pick. Zio, unfortunately, there's not a publicly available document yet. Right now, their document is currently, what was I going to say? Right now, the document's currently only for the coaches because it has the results of week 1 on the document. And once Joey finishes the doc with Autumn, then it'll get posted into the server and I'll update it into the description of my videos. But as of right now, there is no document for me to share. Unfortunately, I wish I could. Up next, Mamoswine, Technician, and Adaptability. Technician on Mamoswine, I believe that he has Icicle Spear, which is a great consideration for that ability, or Rock Tomb. I'm trying to think. Trailblaze is another really good consideration on Technician, but I think that Adaptability is where Mamoswine will really get its value, just because the Ice Ground combination is so powerful. Most teams lack a switch in, if we're looking at teams that have a resistance to ice plus ground. It is a little bit more than usual because of like levitate steals, right? Like typically in draft there's not many of them that are like actually viable. Like Bronzong is not that good. But if we like actually look at things, or like Earth Eater steals like Golden Go, but Golden Go is obviously on this team, so it's like a bit of a flawed example. Or like something like Intimidate Skarmory is like a decent answer to a Pokemon like that. But overall, Mamoswine should just be a very broken pick. And Regieleki is one that I think is quite interesting. Galvanize and Refrigerate, two of the type boost abilities. I think that Regieleki might be a little bit sad when you don't have the Transistor calc available for you, but the Galvanize should hopefully make up for it with either like very strong Double Edge or like Explosion or Hyper Beam calcs, alongside Refrigerate, giving you unblockable Rapid Spin, which I think is going to be really nice, and Ice type coverage for that favorable Boat Beam duo. I think is another very, very strong consideration on that Regieleki, and that's a Pokemon I think can come quite often. Dragalge with Regenerator plus Drizzle. Regen, Dragalge seems like a great pivot, especially like for like a lot of very strong special attackers. Dragalge has enough special bulk to be that natural Spadef sponge as we look at Pokemon in these drafts that could be very, very strong. Dragalge is definitely one of the few Pokemon that has a natural Spadef stat high enough to take them on. I'm a bit worried because a lot of these very oppressive Pokemon are Dragon types, and Dragalge kind of can't do its thing into the Dragon types, but it can still have like a lot of application to like a lot of these strong like Fire, Water, Grass cores, and like electric types, even like the Zapdos on Boffin's team right below it. Dragalge can also handle quite well. Incin Steam Engine, I think, is a bit of an interesting pick. Obviously, you have the fire resistance to work with, or the water weakness. That one's a bit tougher, I think, because so many of these water type attackers are hitting you with Primordial Sea boosted moves or Drizzle boosted moves. So I think that's a bit challenging for this Incineroar to navigate. But Desolate Land boosted moves are also a big consideration. And being able to come in, get that, and then also because Steam Engine, you get 6 speed boosts. You can like hit with a very, very strong power trip right off the gate if you can proc Steam Engine, which is a very interesting consideration for a lot of these Pokemon. Up next on this team, Clefable with Fluffy and Levitate. I think I maybe would have wanted Magikarp on this, but obviously it's on the Galarian Zapdos and you can't double up on your abilities. But I feel like what makes Clefable so good is that the stats are just good enough if you don't take any chip. I guess Levitate can sort of help with that with spikes, but it might be a bit challenging to also manage rocks, right? Fluffy, on the other hand, very, very strong ability, I believe. I don't think Nexus drafted it, but I believe it's on every other team other than Callum's. Yeah, it's on 6 out of 8 teams. So it's like a very, very strong ability, right? Because it's having the damage from contact moves in exchange for a fire weakness. I don't know how it works with interaction into like a Flare Blitz, if it's neutral or if it like doesn't work into Flare Blitz. If anyone knows that interaction, I'm very curious if you wanted to like post it in the chat for me. But that's a very interesting thing. But like Clefable with that, Fluffy boost, it might get over the hump and like not be in like that just enough tier, but instead in like the firmly, I can actually check this strong physical attacker. Maybe not the Earthquake users, just because that's not a contact move, or like any of the non-contact users, but most of the physical attackers are contact. Rampardos, Surge Surfer, Rocky Payload. This seems like a Pokemon that'll be very challenging to use. Granted, it's 1 point, but like if you run like a Focus Sash, Head Smash, Rocky Payload, you probably take a kill, right? Like it's very tough unless you're like head smashing a Great Tusk or like head smashing some like fluffy wall. You're probably doing just like a shit ton with that Rampardos head smash as long as you hit where you're in a good spot. And Surge Surfer is interesting, right? You don't have Electric Surge, but you do have Hadron Engine from Golden Go, which is something to consider. And a lot of other Hadron Engine Pokemon on the opponent side of the field, like Latios. I actually don't know how many Hadron Engines were drafted. I'm saying a lot as though it would be on like every team, but it's actually not. It's on like half of them. So if that, I think it might only be on Shuckle's and Joey's teams actually. We'll go through and we'll see. But interesting Pokemon. Cacturn with Prankster and Grassy Surge. This guy also seems like a decent suicide lead, right? You like Prankster, you get some spikes, you can Destiny Bond, or do like damage with Sucker Punch, and the Grassy Surge, Grassy Terrain, Grassy Glides doing decent work. There's a lot of Grassy Surge Pokemon. I believe Cacturn would be the worst one drafted. Victory Bell probably gives it a run for its money though. But Grassy Surge makes a lot of these graft types more usable, even if they, you know, inherently aren't aren't the best, but it's also very good for terrain control into the psychic types that like to run like Expanding Force. I don't know how many of them there are. I believe there's like 2 or 3. And then also the Hadron engine users that Shuckle may face. And then Pyroar, Beads of Ruin, Desolate Land. This is like Shuckle's pet pick. I think he's really wants to make the Pyroar work. And I think that he's capable of that. We already went and we looked at how Shuckle did into like Nexus's Qianpao. How does Golden Go do into opposing teams? Looks like it does pretty decently into Nexus's team. Primarina obviously being the biggest stopgap. But like just Make It Rain should do plenty of damage. It can't be regen and Volt Absorb. So it either has to choose with getting hit super hard by Thunderbolt or any chip marking on it being near permanent. And then into like Heatran, that's like one of the more challenging Pokemon to break through on Liv's side. Suave, Thundy T could be like, you know, marginally annoying, and Manaphy is going to be your big challenge. Again, it can't be regen and Motor Drive, but you're gonna have to figure out which one it is. Into Joey's team, Volcanian's like your biggest op, but like Hadron Thunderbolt should be pretty good into that. And then just like being slower than like Hydreigon with like a Mega Launcher boosted move could be annoying. Into Boffin's team, Boffin has the Regen Swampert. That's probably one of your best checks. Just like AV Regen Swampert just flipping around you could be pretty annoying. You don't have like a water absorbed guy on this team, I believe. So that's something to definitely consider. And then into Callum's team, Hands will be annoying. P2 could be annoying with something like Unaware, so you can't set up on it. But it also means that it is always taking full power. Make It Rain. Like you can't go negative against it either. And then Vaporeon also being a challenge, as well as Ting-Lu. So that's probably one of your harder gold matchups. And then to Seabad's team, gold just kind of feasts. Yeah, no, it just looks really, really good into Seabad. What was I going to say going with that? And then it pairs really nicely with Screamtail for the most part, with those boom bursts with the pixelate ability. You're hitting a lot of Pokemon that Golden Go maybe struggles with in that Cal matchup, especially like Iron Hands and Ting-Lu. And then Zapdos pairing well as like a third to go along with that. The top 3 looks really lethal. And I like the way that he rounded out his draft for what Shuckle's doing. I think that there's a lot to like here. So for Shuckle, I think I am going to put him into the playoffs tier. And I think what I'll do is I'll just do playoffs or missing. And then once we get to that point, we can go ahead and we can do our predictions. Up next, Olivia. Great Tusk, Scrappy, Thick Fat. You get Guaranteed Spin. I don't know if Scrappy was the right way to go with Guaranteed Spin, but you also are blocking any Intimers, which is something to consider. You know, obviously Nexus has Scarm, which is one that can come in. Shuckle's got the Intim on Incineroar, which, you know, not really a great Tusk answer, to be fair. But then Thick Fat, I think, is pretty interesting. I know they were kind of giving it, not shit, but like, they thought there were better options on Great Tusk. I think that there are maybe some better options, but Thick Fat patches up some weaknesses to some very impactful Pokemon that Liv may go against, like Iron Moth, like Qianpao, like I just mentioned, like Regieleki. Very important to have the Thick Fat in that matchup. Entei with like the Desolate Land could be annoying, although Pixel is something to consider too in that matchup. So I like Thick Fat just like into the matchup spread in general here. I think that is a pretty good pick. Hi, John. What's poppin'? Good to see you. I hope you're doing well. Up next, the Meow with Sword of Ruin and Sniper. I think that is a great Meowscarada combo. Protean's really nice on it, especially with like the triple axle. You could have like maybe considered like Technician for that move, but if you're not Protean, then like who cares? I think the Sword of Ruin boost gets you to where you need to be with like your knockoffs and your flower tricks most of the time, and that Sniper flower trick, if your opponents have like a very weak grass resist, could definitely be something that you want to consider, especially with the amount of grassy terrain that's like floating around in this league. A bunch of the Ogre Ponds having it. Actually, only one Ogre Pond has it. But just like most teams having at least some grassy surge presence, even if it's not like on like every team, I think that's something that's pretty cool for the Meow. Is like you'll get some strong sniper crits, and like it makes Scarf Meowscarada in the late game super duper potent. Heatran, Earth Eater, and Wellbake's Body. I like keeping that like Flash Fire-esque pick because there are like strong fires that Tusk might not want to handle, like Iron Moth, although I just mentioned that one. I think Heatran definitely checks that guy far better than Tusk ever would. And then Cinderace is another one that Heatran... I think that one you'd probably default to Tusk, actually. Just because Cinderace can high jump kick you or Heatran. But if it does fire a Pyro Ball into it, then all of a sudden you're at +2 defense and you're in a pretty good spot. I like the Heatran like sort of anti-meta pick with those immunities, because also opponents in the builder have to respect it having 2 immunities, even though in the battle it'll only obviously have 1. Prism Armor and Psychic Surge Latias. Yeah, this was another Psychic Surge user, which I think is pretty nice, and also just like giving Psychic Terrain control for this team seems really helpful. It does have a Hadron Engine Pokemon technically with Charjabug, but like realistically, this is your main form of terrain control on this team. Just being able to set the Psychic Surge and protect yourself from priority moves while also getting the strong Expanding Force seems really nice. Especially protecting from like strong Sucker Punches. There's a lot of Sucker Punch in the tier. I guess like mainly it would be like Chen Pao is obviously the strongest one. You need to like Scarf to really get around that. But there's like other Sucker Punches as well, like Cinderace, which I've mentioned now a few times just because I see it on the board picked. Maybe there's not too much other Sucker Punch picked in this draft pool. Hisuian Samurot's another one. And Skuntank as like another Sucker Punch user, which Latias could like, theoretically shut down. Still, most of those Pokemon are dark types, so it will be a bit of a fight to get through them. But Prism Armor seems really, really good. Just like kind of like a Necrozma on steroids, with like being able to execute Calm Mind like recovery sets with like 2 coverage moves. Latias should in most matchups be able to find like Calm Mind recover 2 attacks that can cover most of the team. And once you're doing that, you should be doing pretty well. Sheer Force and Delta Stream Enam Therian. Delta Stream's interesting. I believe this is the only instance of the Delta Stream being an ability pick. And seeing that is a very, very solid choice here. Not only does it get rid of your rock, ice, and electric weaknesses, but it also can shut down opposing opposing Primordial Sea and Desolate Land. That being said, it doesn't necessarily switch into the Primordial Sea or Desolate Land users the best, but we have their Primordial Sea user on this team, so we can hopefully make things work. Just like in that context, I think the Delta Stream is still just like a very nice pick, because it also helps you check Chen Pao, helps you check Pokemon like Latios a little bit better because you don't have that like ice or electric weakness. So I think that's actually a pretty solid sleeper pick. And then obviously Sheer Force, all of Enamorus's special moves, realistically, you're getting the Sheer Force boost on between Moonblast, Earth Power, Mystical Fire, Sludge Bomb. You're getting all of your moves Sheer Force boosted. So that seems like a pretty good pick. Poltegeist, Shadow Shield, and Pixelate. Yeah, this seems like a pretty potent Shell Smash sweeper. You go Shadow Shield, Boots, and you smash up, and you can probably deal with a lot of Pokemon. And then like with the Strength Saps to stay healthy. Pixelate's nice for dark types. Looking at a lot of teams, Ghost plus Fairy does do really well. I'm just thinking back to my VGC experience just using Lunala with that Ghost plus Fairy coverage of like Terra Fairy Moonblast, kind of doing the same thing that this Pixelate Terra Blast will do. I don't think Poltergeist gets Hyper Voice, which is why I'm saying Terra Blast, but if it does get Hyper Voice and I stand corrected, that 10 extra base power multiplied by 1.2, so that 12 extra base power may come in clutch for this thing when you're dealing with some dark types, like Hisuian Samurott, for example. If you can like put up the Psychic terrain for that guy, it could be pretty annoying. Up next, Tentacruel, Corrosion Regenerator. This is your regen pivot. This one does have blockable spin, but like you have Great Tusk, so like you're not necessarily like too pressed for that. I do think Tentacruel is kind of just like a fraudulent Pokemon in general. Maybe Regenerator solves its issues. It probably solves its issues. It probably solves every Pokemon's issues, realistically. But I think that the Tentacruel with the Corrosion seems pretty okay. But I think you're just running Regenerator most of the time. And honestly, that makes sense, right? On these Regenerator Pokemon, why burn another ability when you really just want to be running Regenerator? Bastiodon, Levitate, Fluffy. I think that guy plays pretty well. So bulky, you can theoretically Metal Burst down a lot of like neutral hits, and then the Fluffy, you're just going to be taking very little damage from like non-fighting physical attacks. You still just die to Earthquake, but you can like help take on some like of the fire types that don't necessarily kill you. That's a lot because Fluffy will nuke you. Well, what am I saying? But like some just like general physical attackers. I'm trying to look at the board and see like what physical attackers this plays particularly well into with the Fluffy, and something like Iron Boulder, maybe. I don't know how much like the fighting move does. It's like a lot of these Pokemon just have like very solid fighting coverage, but I guess some of the dragons is what it plays well into, but a lot of them also cover for you. So maybe I'm overhyping Bastiodon. Vivillon, No Guard, Magic Guard. Both seem like pretty solid abilities for it. I don't foresee it being that great of a Pokemon, but you never know. Raikou, Refrigerate Primordial Sea. This guy seems quite solid. With the being able to hit your hit ground types better. Refrigerate's also nice into the grass types. There's a lot of annoying grass types in this format. A lot of lower tier ones that can even be quite annoying, so the Refrigerate might come in clutch there. And then Primordial Sea, you get strong Weather Ball. Being able to, get that Weather Ball through onto the ground types is really nice. But Scald also boosted by Primordial Sea. You might just want to opt for that in some weeks where you just, you want the burns. You never go wrong with the burns there. And the last pick on this team, Charjabug, Hadron Engine, Quick Draw. I'm sure Liv will bring it at least once. I don't foresee it being useful. Looking at this team's matchups into other teams, we kind of touched on a lot of like the defensive applications of this team, but looking at some of the more offensive implications and how it deals damage and deals with the opponents, Great Tusk is a big one. There are a lot of like Earth Eater Pokemon or Levitate Pokemon. Like every team's packing some additional ground immunities, which can be annoying for it, but just being like always defaulting on you can rocks and you can spin. This Pokemon will get value in every matchup. And then there'll be some where the opponent just doesn't have the extra ground immunities, and it'll be able to go ham. But I think supporting the offenses of like Meowscarada, Heatran, getting it so that like you don't need to run like Boots Enam and can instead run like Life Orb Sheer Force and then start nuking things seems really, really solid for this team. There's a lot of like there's like some Pokemon that I view just like semi-fraudulently in the Tentacruel and the Raikou. So, maybe I will hold off on putting this in guaranteed playoff contention for now. I would rather put it in like the missing tier, just because I think there's also like some wasted potential. Maybe consolidating, a couple of these ones into a 2 might have been better, or like being able to like take the Tentacruel down and put regen somewhere a little more impactful than Tentacruel might have been a better pick. But that's just me. So I will go ahead and put this in the missing for now. But I also think this team is very, very good. I just I don't know. I think that it does look like there's a lot of Pokemon, but realistically, it's going to probably fall into the similar vein of Nexus' team, just like with an 8th member instead of being only 7. But I still just think like Raikou is going to disappoint after like having the chance to use it, man, like it's just not good. Maybe his abilities can save it, but it's just a disappointing Pokemon. Up next, Suave, welcome to draft. I think this team is incredible. I've gotten a chance to look at it already. I wanted to hear Suave's thought process behind it, just because it's his first draft league, and he seems to understand the format quite well already. Just probably with almost any ability, and then we fight knowledge. Manaphy with regen and motor drive. I think this is going to be the premier pivot of the league. Could win like a defensive Pokemon of the year type of award, where it's just coming in, regenning, and flip turning out. And motor drive sweeps are potentially possible. You do very well into Pokemon like Regieleki, that may be trying to get around, they're normally bad coverage with the galvanizes, or not the refrigerates, or like Jolteon, for example, where having that motor drive makes you into like a Pokemon that can just come in and sweep. And then Regenerator is going to be your baseline for most games, I would think, where you're going to want to, be able to have the guy in and just regen out and get some nice recovery. Up next, the Boulder. I think this Pokemon normally, but it normally doesn't have an ability. So I think Sharpness Boulder looks really solid. There's a lot of Pokemon that have like immunities to specific types because of these abilities. Rock is not one of those types. There are certainly some great rock answers just because of the fluffy picks. There's a lot of Pokemon with fluffy that might be able to take this on a little bit better than like I'm giving it credit, especially like the fluffy ground types. But aside from that, like the Sharpness, Psycho Cuts, Sharpness, Sacred Sword, Sharpness, Mighty Cleaves look really solid. And then Queenly Majesty should have some good play here too. There's a lot of like Grassy Glide, Sucker Punch, Aqua Jet, Pokemon in general. I think Sharpness will be this Pokemon's bread and butter though. Up next, Treads. He went with a double immunity combo with Levitate and Water Absorb. I like picking Levitate over Earth Eater because you already have one immunity ability that's being able to give you health back. So I like Levitate, if there's like also just like a matchup where maybe you don't necessarily care about the immunity, but you're still just very happy to have that Spikes immunity from being off the ground. I think that's certainly a great consideration for Treads, although it is able to be spin blocked, but a lot of these teams actually don't have like a super good ghost type or even have a ghost type. Especially one that you would feel like comfortable chunking in front of like Iron Treads. Like Nexus has Banette, but it's not real. Shuckle doesn't have. Liv has the Poltegeist, which maybe with like you can. And then there's certainly like Pokemon like Pecharunt, which will just be able to spin block you. But that's one Pecharunt. I don't know if Suave even plays Seabad. I would assume so because he only dodges one person. But I assume that's a matchup that'll get played. Up next is the Ogerpon with Desolate Land and Turbo Blaze. Desolate Land, Ivy Cudgel probably just bricks most teams. And then Turbo Blaze to get around your magic, or not your Flash Fires or well-baked bodies in this instance. Most of them would be well-baked, like Skarmory, like Heatran. I think that's a really good way around. And also like the Thick Fat of like Great Tusk. What other like Pokemon are we looking at with abilities like that? Also just like getting around some of these Primordial Seas on the come-in, like Ogerpon Wellspring. You have like a pretty favorable entry point with that thing. What other Primordial Sea have we seen? Thundy Eye. That thing can kind of just sludge bomb you. It's not really relying on his water type damage into you, so that's definitely something to consider. Florges, Prankster, Tinted Lens. I like the Tinted Lens pick a lot because this thing just really lacks coverage. Oh, I skipped like 2 Pokemon, didn't I? Arch with Primordial Sea, Swift Swim, and then Thundurus with Cheer Force Drizzle. That's the Rain Core right there. Drizzle Thundy seems very, very strong. Just like as a consistent damage dealer. Oh, I realized that my music stopped. Oops. My apologies for that. But yeah, the Primordial Sea on the Arch seems very solid, just like spamming Electro Shot. Or just like even just like threatening Electro Shot, forcing in like ground types that might not want to take like your Draco Meteors or Flash Cannons of the sort. But then also just like being a Swift Swim sweeper with Thundurus's Drizzle. Thundurus providing the Drizzle support seems really nice for the Arch because it's Drizzle that can also like Volt Switch in and get that Arch going to just sweep, which seems very, very plausible. And also just like Primordial Sea Arch seems like it won't die. And if you're running that, then you can get away with your Sheer Force Thunderous. You can obviously run Drizzle on it as well in your Primordial Sea matchup. It's just you might want to be just Sheer Force in that matchup if you're not trying to enable your team. It's also hard to get like the Drizzle sweeps going when people have ways to just like completely clear the weather super easily with Primordial Sea and Testlet Land. So I imagine that the Sheer Force will be more consistent on the Thunderous as opposed to the Drizzle. Florges up with Prankster and Tinted Lens. I think that one's pretty good, like I was saying. Tinted Lens fairy move, it's very, very strong. And just like I feel like there will be weeks where like Scarf or Specs, Tinted Lens Moonblast can just cleave through a lot of teams. There's not a lot of quad fairy resists, especially that were drafted. It's Heatran. You probably just bench this guy in the Heatran matchup. I can't lie. It seems like a liability. Iron Moth. You can always Psychic that guy, but like probably just bench this thing. Let's be real. Skuntank with Earth Eater and Vessel of Ruin. That's like Tinglu at home, except like with Earth Eater, no weaknesses. Grounded Poison is a very important role in this thing. And I imagine like with these lower tiers, probably teams have like them specifically in mind to like, you know, counter a specific threat. And none are more impactful at doing that than Girder. Nexus would otherwise, I think, just throttle this team completely with POW. And the Girder being a great POW answer seems really nice. In addition to that, it seems pretty good into like Terrakion. As like a fluffy Eevio guy, can probably just be very, very fat and take a lot of those like physical attackers on. I imagine like Intim can help you deal with Boffin's Garchomp. So like I do foresee there are like some playable matchups for the Girder, and I really like what it can do. Arboliva, Hadron Engine. That seems like an interesting Hadron Engine user to go with the Surge Surfer Weird Year. This seems like Suave just wanted to kind of get funny with it a little bit. I don't know if like Arboliva has like nature. I don't think Nature Power is a move anymore. Otherwise, I'm just like, I guess like it still just like does do a lot of damage, but I feel like your Hadron Engine users, you usually want to be able to get Thunderbolt off with them. So maybe a bit of a weaker Hadron Engine, but still to power Weird Year's Surge Surfer. This guy actually has some pretty strong offensive stats and coverage, so I definitely think it's possible. And then Magic Guard seems nice just to like get the Life Orb going, but and also be like an OTR guy, kind of like a bit like Reuniclus could be, but like also you could go physical. So that seems like a good pick. Overall, looking at like some of Suave's matchups, I think that he has a pretty good matchup spread into a lot of these teams. So I am going to go ahead and put him in to the playoffs for now. Halfway through, we see 2 playoffs, 2 non-playoffs. Up next, Joey. Joey, I think, came into this draft with a lot of good ideas. Oh, thank you, Ray. Terrain Pulse. I forgot that Terrain Pulse was a move. I didn't know that they even distributed it this generation. I can't lie. I remember last generation, there was like a decent bit of people drafting like Coco Blastoise and using Terrain Pulse Shell Smash Blastoise to decent success. But I didn't realize that they still distributed Terrain Pulse. I thought that they just like kind of, it was like one of those, they probably don't, right? There's not like a TM for it anymore, or like a tutor like there was in the Isle of Armor. Only Mon that gets it this gen. That's awesome. That is really, really cool. Yeah, but that's a great pick for the Hadron Engine user then. My bad on the disrespect. Yeah, no, I think that this Pokemon can definitely go far. You still do kind of struggle with opposing grass types a little bit when it comes to breaking those, but overall seems like a pretty good pick. Joey's team, now we can go ahead and get into that. There's the Latios, the mascot pick, the dragon spam of this team. Piece 1, Hadron Latios, Tinted Lens seems really, really strong as well. Maybe just like because Latios' stabs have immunities and Tinted Lens can't get around that. I don't know if that would have been my personal pick for the second Latios ability, but I think Hadron Engine comes to enough games where it's like you don't feel bad about it. And there are some games where you just want to kind of nuke the steel with the Tinted Lens move. But in my mind, the Hadron boosted Thunderbolt just does enough where you could like maybe find some other uses. But like, because like, right, you're killing Skarmory, you're killing the Corv. Heatran, you kind of can like surf it down. I'm just like looking at opposing Steel types. Golden Go, you can Shadow Ball down. Cobalt, just you can Psychic without getting the value. And Crown, you can Shadow Ball. And then Arch, you can Dragon Pulse. Yeah, I think I would drop Tinted Lens if I was Joey, just like looking at the matchup spread. I get like the idea behind it, but like what you're like, you want to hit Copper Raja harder. Okay, I think that guy just dies to 2 Hadron Thunderbolts anyways. Tarak with Sword of Ruin and Scrappy. Scrappy's really solid, like we were mentioning, for the Intimidate users, but I think the Sword of Ruin also is probably just this thing bread and butter. I maybe would have gone with Rocky Payload over Scrappy, just like I think that power, just like that additional like choice band damage on your rock type moves seems really, really strong. So maybe I would have considered Rocky Payload, but still seems good with the Sword of Ruin, just because you're also boosting up that fighting damage and like your other just like general physical attacks as well. And also, one thing that I find funny is like the Sword of Ruin guys are like okay counters to the other Sword of Ruin guys because you negate the Sword of Ruin with your own Sword of Ruin, because of the way that ability works. And Terrakion does like not really match up the best into the rest of the Sword of Ruin field, I can't lie. Like there's a Garchomp, there's a Masquerada, so I don't necessarily know about that, but I still think that it's like a very, very solid ability. Just you're not going to be able to use it for that specific purpose, which is not a very good purpose. That's just kind of like a funny interaction. Tink with regen, I think this is probably one of the best regen pivots drafted. You know, it can come in, it can rocks, encore. It does like Tink usually have like the 4 moveslot syndrome a little bit, but especially with the regen, you'll be able to consistently check the Pokemon that you most importantly need to check on a lot of these teams. And then opting for Steelworker over an immunity ability like Well-Baked Body or Earth Eater or Levitate. I think Steelworker's cool with the hammer move, but I think Levitate or Well-Baked Body would probably have served this Tink a little bit better in my opinion. Magic Guard and Sheer Force Volcanion. That Pokemon seems heat. Hold up, only for 12 points. That seems like a pretty good steal as well. Being able to come in and without fear of the rocks because of the Magic Guard. I think Life Orb Magic Guard is probably this thing's best set. Being able to come in, get that Life Orb boost. There's not a lot of Pokemon that switch into Volcanion from what I've found. Just because like a lot of the Pokemon that want to, like there's some teams that can, right? Like Callum's Vaporeon will be a great switch in. There's some like dragon types that can do it, right? Like what's some other good like switch-ins, right? But like you see me like struggling to find these good switch-ins. Shuckle's Dragalge will be a pretty good switch-in. But it like still can get earth powered, right? This thing does have a lot of good coverage. So that's definitely something to consider when you're looking at these matchups. Up next, regular grass Ogerpon with Queenly Majesty and Sniper. Sniper's interesting. You can obviously run Focus Energy and do like a lot of damage that way, but I feel like Swords Dance is just typically more reliable. And then Queenly Majesty is a pretty solid ability, blocking the priority. But I again feel like probably just Grassy Surge is better on this guy. Granted, you're using it elsewhere, so I can't like really complain about that. But Queenly Majesty also seems nice. Granted, there is a bit of Ice Shard in this format with Chen Pao and the Mammoth, but like also you're not like fast like Teal Ogerpon that can Terra. So I don't necessarily know, because like yes, you stop Mamoswine's Ice Shard, but you don't stop really Pow's if it's just gonna faster than you and like Icicle Crash you or Ice Spinner you. So I still think it's like a good enough Pokemon. And like Encore, very broken. He has some really good Encore on this team. Kilo, Primordial Sea, Serene Grace. I think you're going to be running Primordial Sea more. Serene Grace has a lot of cheese opportunities, but Primordial Sea, get that Water Weather Ball, seems really nice. It's like a little bit of Zapdos at home, right? But the overall sentiment that I'm getting is probably a pretty good just like general speed option for this team. Because because he was like kind of lacking elite speed, something that would like force Chien-Pao into the adamant nature, or not allow it to go adamant nature, rather force it into the jolly nature. And so I think that's a pretty good pick just for that. And something to outspeed something like Meowscarada, Cinderace, no Greninja drafted, but like generally in draft, that's like a tier that I like think about, or like no Torn. So there was like a lot of speed missing from the top of this board, so there will be a pretty good chance that Kilowattrel is the fastest Pokemon in any given matchup, which is always just like a very useful statistic to have on your side. And then Donphan, Fluffy, Desolate Land seems pretty solid. I maybe would have gone with an ability that makes your spins unblockable, because Donphan is like the easiest Pokemon to spin block of all time, especially when like the Pecharuns of the world are Earth eating you. So it definitely seems like hazards could be a bit annoying for a team like this. So I maybe would have considered an ability like in place of Desolate Land, maybe, because right, you're just Desolate Land to be able to switch into the Primordial Sea Pokemon mainly. That's what I can gather. There's probably some interactions that I'm missing, but like that seems like what the main point of it is on this team. Just because you kind of don't have a Desolate Land user, but it kind of just still loses to most of the Primordial Sea picks anyways. Like Wellspring just beats you anyways. Arch just kind of beats you anyways. I mean, like Donphan can theoretically scare it out maybe once, but like it just seems like it loses a lot to most of them anyways. Just because like maybe in the general sense it's probably not bad, but in this particular draft pool, I'm not that big of a fan. Hydra, Dragon's Maw, Mega Launcher seems pretty solid. So yeah, this guy's going to output incredible damage. Sucks that you don't get like Flash Cannon boost on the Mega Launch. But you still just get a lot of good damage off. And then Dragon's Maw for the matchups where Latios is breaking open the Fairy type. Hydra can go ahead and like clean it up, you know? And then you have one of the best Fairy switches in Tink. So, like I don't foresee Fairies being too much of an issue. So I think the Double Dragon's really good. I really like Double Dragon teams a lot. Obviously, I won that BBR Season 5 with Double Dragon. Granted, they're pretty different dragons. It was Garchomp Backs. But I think in practice, just like you're going to be able to overwhelm, and you have the defensive resources to not get punished. Frostlass, I like with Technician and Beads. Because Frostlass, typically you're lacking in with that damage, but being able to actually like threaten the kills with like Technician Triple Axle, or like Beads, Ice Beams, and Shadow Balls, because the type coverage is pretty strong of like Ice plus Ghost, two of the types that are generally a bit tougher to switch into. Yeah, no, Ray, I also thought Dragon's Maw and Latios made a little more sense. But it makes sense when, like, Hydra's actually, I believe, like, hits harder. And so you're, like, also able with Hydra a little bit better to run, like, Dragon Dance sets. And Dragon's Maw, I think, is very important on, like, a set like that, where you're kind of lacking, like, a general, whatchamacallit, but, like, a general ability, right? Because Mega Launcher doesn't really give you anything on a set like that, but Dragon's Maw does. But yeah, no, Frostlass I think is a great pick, and it also gives some pretty good hazards, right? Like, we already have very good rocks on this team. Tink will be able to get them off every game, I think. There's not really like Magic Bounce that I think was drafted. I think it was just banned, if I recall correctly. But yeah, I think that there's a lot of really good stuff that Frostlass can be doing. Victory Bell, Grassy Surge, Prankster. We see that combination on Cacturn as well. I think Priority Strength Sap is nasty. Priority Strength Sap you can like actually go absolutely crazy with. Yeah, the Technician Frostlass is great. I believe it also gets like Mud Shot or something. Right, like something like that like really like can work in like the ice ground scenario. And I'm trying to remember like all of Frostlass's like niche coverage moves that it has, but like the main one that comes to mind is just like Triple Axle. That move is so good with Technician, and I believe Shard as well, right, with Technician. And then Cricketune, Surge, Surfer, and Sturdy. Sturdy Webs, right? Like that's a pretty consistent strategy. You just obviously could get taunted, maybe I would have gone with something like Oblivious over the Surge Surfer. But I think Joey just kind of wanted to be funny, which, from a subjective standpoint, I think it's great. And I think he will definitely, there will be a matchup where Surge Surfer Cricketune comes in and kills Chen Pao or something. I think that could be, a very good pick. But I maybe would have gone, Oblivious if I was, trying to be 100% objective. Because Untauntable webs, then you're, putting it, oh, you need to, Rock Blast me or something. But, you're in a scenario where, you can, Scarf webs if you really, really need to get them up. Or you can just, not lose to Rock Blast. Lots of things you can do. I think this is a playoff team for sure. So many Pokemon. And I think especially if Joey, wants, he can, even change out a bunch of these abilities for free. And really, potentially, eat this collection of Pokemon without even changing them, I think can be optimized. Which I think there's a lot of teams, a lot of things that I maybe am missing. But, going through and, all of these teams, picking out abilities that would be helpful in specific matchups especially is something that now in such a small league you're able to do and really figure out. Up next, Iron Boffin, with his team starting out with Zapdos. I think this was one of my favorite picks in the draft. Primordial Sea and No Guard. Both of them kind of are acting pretty similarly, right? Primordial Sea lets you spam Hurricane, Thunder, and Weather Ball without fear of missing. No Guard lets you spam Hurricane, Thunder, and Heat Wave without fear of missing, but also gives you the added benefit of not needing to worry about the Desolate land users. And especially, I think No Guard's, quite useful in, the Water Absorb Iron Treads matchup, right? Because you can, instead of relying on your Weather Ball, you rely on, No Guard Heat Wave and do a lot of damage. I could have considered Magic Guard on this thing as well, but he has another Magic Guard user, which seems like it makes sense. No Guard, put it on Zapdos, you'll get value out of it. In matches where the Desolate Land guy might be able to switch in on you. Especially when the Desolate Land also takes away your Hurricane accuracy, it makes you miss. So I think that No Guard complements Primordial Senior perfectly. Garchomp, Sword of Ruin, Moxie. I think I've already had a chance to mention the Sword of Ruin Garchomp a bit. Moxie seems really nasty with the Scale Shot Sweeper sets, right? Rough Skin Garchomp, it definitely has a real ability, but I think the Sword of Ruin pushes a bunch of calcs to points where they where Garchomp normally misses out on the kill or needs Life Orb. Now all of a sudden you're free to run your loaded dice. One other No Guard thing that I missed, No Guard Zap Cannon, right? Incredible combination. Who needs Thunder 30% when you get Zap Cannon's 100% paralysis rate? But yeah, no, like I was saying, Sword of Ruin can put you into those kill thresholds that a lot of Pokemon or that Garchomp kind of feels like it misses out on a lot of the time, especially at +2. There's things that can definitely Eevee to live +2 Earthquake, but can't live +2 Sword of Ruin Earthquake, or +2 Life Orb Earthquake that can do, but not +2 Life Orb Sword of Ruin. So I think there's the Sword of Ruin calcs look nuts, just off of head calcs and experiencing Garchomp in the past, and then the Moxie Scale Shot sets that can just go crazy, give you room for a coverage move where you don't need to Sword Stance and you can instead be this late game terror. Swampert. I know I just said Tinkaton was one of the best regen pivots. I think Swampert's really good as maybe the next best. Surrounding it with Zapdos, Cobal, and Entei that are all incredible grass resists, right? So you're punishing grass types as well with the Primordial Sea Zapdos just hurricaning them, or with the No Guard Zapdos just hurricaning them. And then Drizzle as well for Swift Swim user Crawdaunt, which most of the time you're going to be running Regenerator. But if you really see a good Crawdaunt matchup, Swampert's capable of enabling it, right? And then I also think just reliable rocks. Double Ground is a concept that I really enjoy using. Yeah, Garchomp I think was actually one of the best Moxie picks. We didn't see a lot of people go for it, right? We saw one Moxie. I believe we see a Soul Heart, or we see two Moxies because Cinderace also has it. Two Moxies I believe on the field. I think there were two pretty good Moxie picks. I can't lie, but I think Garchomp really does benefit from it. Magic Guard Cobal, Magic Guard Steel Beam, right? That's your main interaction that you're probably targeting with that. Now your Cobalion actually does damage. It seems pretty nice. Oh, you're helping Callum's draft. Oh yeah, I know Callum just made a bunch of ability changes, which For this, because they have not been revealed, I'm just talking about like the stock draft when I get to it. But I really did enjoy Callum's like drafting process, like with the draft analysis. Oh yeah, you were like in that video, right, Ray? But yeah, where was I with Boffin's draft? The Magic Guard and Surge Surfer. We got Hadron Engine Rotom to set it up for it. That's a really fun combination. Cobalt typically is weak, right? Like that's my main issue with it. But Cobalt, I think with the Magic Art Steel Beam can do its thing, and also just like gives you more reliable rocks. Like fundamentally, this draft league team works, and that's what I like really enjoy. And also like Iron Defense Body Press, seems quite nice into a lot of these teams that maybe don't appreciate just like big beefy body presses and like don't particularly enjoy their physical attackers being shut down. So yeah, I really think that this Cobalion pick is quite nice. Yeah, no, Cobalt gets rocks, but then they didn't give it to Crown, which makes it a little bit more annoying. But I think Pert can rock most games, but also like AV Regen Pert is going to be something that probably wants to come a bit. So being able to put the rocks on the Cobalt when the Garchomp doesn't want them is nice. Entei comes with Pixelate and Desolate Land, two great combinations. Fire Fairy is very, very challenging to switch in on, especially with the threat of rock and ground coverage of like the Stone Edge and the Stomping Tantrum, right? So that seems like a very good combination on Entei, especially because your Pixelate move of choice is Extreme Speed or Double Edge, but like Extreme Speed. Being able to pick off a lot of like Dragon types, especially I'm looking at like Joey's Latios next to it and Hydreigon seems very, very solid. And then like Ments as well on Cal's team, and like even things like the Thick Fat Great Tusk, being able to have Pixelate for that seems really nice. And then Desolate Land, of course, so strong. But another thing that Desolate Land enables is Solar Beam. You are the Swampert player in this team, so that's not something that like you'll actually be able to like benefit from. But there's like some other teams that have like annoying bulky waters that you can just Solar Beam away. Although I don't necessarily think that it's a set that can come very much, but I think that it does have a lot of good utility. Ogerpon Cornerstone. This Pokemon seems nuts. You get a Rocky Payload to benefit your rocks, your Rock Ivy Cudgel, and then Grassy Surge obviously to benefit Grassy Glide and Power Whip and things like that, or just Wood Hammer, right? Because you don't want to miss, and you don't have to worry about like breaking your own Sturdy anymore. Sturdy is a really nice ability on this Ogerpon Cornerstone. I could have even considered keeping it just because like the free layer of spikes is so nice usually most of the time, but then often just like the Rocky Payload ability to just, a lot of these teams don't have a great Rocky Payload, especially when you consider that the Ivy Cudgel doesn't make contact, so you can't like even block it with the Fluffy ability that a lot of these Pokemon are running as like their theoretical answer to like these rock types. Yeah, I think it's going to be a challenge for a lot of these teams to answer this Ogerpon Cornerstone, right? Like, because generally, like your Rockers as ground types, you just get whipped. Your Steel types are going to be your best bet for this thing, but obviously it does have like some coverage for those Pokemon, but still, you're going to want to be very considerate of that. So I think this Ogerpon looks really good. G-Weeze, Prankster, Fluffy. I think that's a you are missing out on like a lot of what G-Weeze is. Just like I'm kind of like having to like wrap my head around that, just because like I'm thinking of G-Weeze naturally with like that like neutralizing gas and levitate stuff, and that's just not what this one is at all. But Prankster seems really nice to like just I was talking a lot about unblockable spin. This is unblockable fog pretty much, just because like your Prankster fogging just can't do it on dark. I guess it is blockable because you can't do it on dark types, right? Like you're actually giving them a way to block your defog as opposed to like an unblockable one. But obviously G-Weeze pressures dark types quite well, so it's definitely something to consider. And then Fluffy, really nice fighting type answer. One of the better answers into something like a Terrakion or something. Yeah, also like yeah, your defog being blocked by Queenly Majesty. If you really need to defog and they have Pokemon that can block it, you're gonna be a bit annoyed. This team doesn't have like good removal, which is what I've noticed, which is probably like its main knock for me. Just because I feel like in the long run, that's definitely something that I like to prioritize, because like fundamentally, we're still playing Pokemon, even though they got wacky abilities, right? So I think that's going to be something that's very important for this team. The Swift Swim adaptability, Crawdon kind of alluded to it earlier when we were talking about the Drizzle Swampert, but I think keeping adaptability on this was really smart. 55 with Swift Swim, it's still just like too slow, I think. And obviously you're giving up that great adaptability damage. So I personally, I don't know. I think it's like a decent pick, but it's also like you're relying on this to be your dark type in a world of Psychic Surge, Expanding Force, Azelf, and Latias. So I don't know about the Crawdon pick. And then Espeon, Psychic Surge, Tinted Lens. This team's going to have 3 terrains, which I think is going to be interesting to manage. Because also, in Psychic Surge, your default can now be blocked by putting up Psychic Terrain for your opponent. But then Tinted Lens, I think, is actually a really good pick for the Espeon. Just because you have the Fairy coverage for the Dark types, and then Psychic for the rest. That actually does work like a very good Tinted Lens combo, in my opinion. And then lastly is Rotom, keeping the native ability of Levitate, but also adding in Hadron Engine, I think is a really good mix for this team. I really like a lot of what Boffin does with like the Pokemon from an individual standpoint, but it's just like missing key draft important things where I'm just, I'm not the highest on it of everything. And I think all in all, I would put this in like the missing, but like, I don't know, like all of these like missing teams, right? Like a few small changes and all of a sudden I see them in playoffs. So it's going to be tough for me to like say that I feel confident about my rankings. I just like, I don't know. It'll be tough. Up next, Callum. This is Callum's drafted team. I don't know if he's going to talk about it at the end of his week 1 game or at the start of his week 2 game, but like half of the Pokemon get ability changes. So just looking at it, from this perspective, Iron Hands, I love Iron Hands. I think this Pokemon is awesome. And then going with the offensive plus defensive idea. Refrigerate offensively seems super nice. Fake Out and Double Edge, both getting that. And then you get like the Bolt Beam Iron Hand seems really nice. And then Earth Eater defensively coming in on the grounds seems nice as well. There's a lot of like physically offensive ground types. And Iron Hands, you have that incredible physical defense and HP stat where you should be able to take on most of their secondary stabs. All of a sudden you become like a great Iron Treads answer, a decently potent Garchomp answer, pretty good at answering Ursaluna. So I really like this Iron Hands pick. I think this guy's just incredible. Can come to most games, if not all games, and put in like 2 to 3 kills. Iron Hands is like the most guaranteed 1.5 for 1 of all time, I think. Like, it's just such a good Pokemon. Up next is the Crown with Tinted Lens and Soul Heart. Tinted Lens, great ability because like the Steel, there's a lot of Pokemon that resist Steel. It's not a good offensive type, right? That's like the main trade-off. Best defensive type, worst offensive type. And having the Tinted Lens, all of a sudden, the Choice Specs boosted Tachyon Cutters just do so much damage. And Soul Heart, I don't know how snowball this thing can get. It seems like it can set up sufficiently and then just win. And then not being able to have like booster speed on like a Soul Heart set, right? Because you obviously lose out on your ability to be like photosynthesis or Quark Drive rather. Which like Iron Hands I don't necessarily think, or Iron Crowns I don't necessarily think like really got a lot off of that. So I just think Soul Heart might maybe with like the Scarf could have been real. Steel Beam Tinted Lens or Steel Beam Magikarp, yeah, that could have been cool on this thing, but yeah, I think just like you're saying, the Tinted Lens boosted Tachyons are just more consistent. And then they got very creative in their drafting order here, Callum did. Going and diving for Porygon 2 next with Unaware and Sticky Hold. Unaware means you can't set up on the Porygon 2. Sticky Hold means you can't knock it off. So very, very good consideration there with the Unaware being like superb in a lot of matchups. But obviously it's a double-edged sword. There's a lot of strong Draco Meteors out there. And you don't want to necessarily like give your opponents fat Draco Meteor boosts into you, but the Sticky Hold's great for that, right? Like there's a lot of strong knockoff, like Meowscarada's in this draft, or even like Tinkaton, that's like very fat knockoff for Swampert, something like that just runs like bulky knockoff. Porygon 2 is an even more reliable pivot. And I wish that it kept like teleport still, like toxic. I think that would have made it like, obviously then you wouldn't be getting it for 5 points, but I think Porygon 2's like move pool just being like slightly limited in this generation is a little bit annoying for it. The Mence is next. Dragon's Maw Shadow Shield. This is a really good combination. It's like Dragonite at home, right, with the Shadow Shield over the multi-scale that you can't like Mold Breaker through, obviously. Makes it really nice. You're missing like Dragonite's Extreme Speed, but you hit like harder, and you can go for like just Dragon's Maw Draco Meteor as just like they're coming in really, really prepping for a Dragon Dance set, and they just get Dracoed. That's already something that happens in like standard draft. And now you're just like get Dracoed by a Dragon's Maw Mence. Like that does so much damage. Yeah, this seems like a great pick up. And the Rabombi next for elite speed. I think, yeah, this team was lacking speed so far. Getting the Rabombi up with adaptability. That makes sense. Fairy adaptability. Moonblast is very spammable. Every team does have some steals, but you already have really good steal answer in Iron Hands, right? Like, that's pretty good. There's also like, what was I gonna say? Like fires that can be annoying, but you get some pretty good fire answers down the board. So I really like the adaptability pick on this thing. As a whole, I'm not the biggest Rabombi fan, but I think that it's definitely playable, and adaptability makes it more so playable than ever any Rabombi was before it. I'm like thinking of like the 8 abilities. Could any of those have been useful for it? But like not really. None of them really help you that much with like getting through steel types. If there was like a ground Pixelate, that would have been like really broken on Rabombi, but there's not. So yeah, these make sense. The Serena, I personally am not the biggest fan of Serena, but I think Scrappy and Grassy Surge lean into this thing super well with what its toolkit actually does. Scrappy, so that you're able to get your guaranteed rapid spins. I've been talking a lot about the guaranteed rapid spin, but I think that's super nice, especially for something like Iron Hands, where just preventing that thing from getting chipped down is super nice. And then down the board, like Tinglu as well, like spikes could be annoying into a build like this, so the guaranteed rapid spin is nice. And then Grassy Surge, there's the added niche. Not only is it a very strong Grassy Glide, but also shutting down a lot of the Hadron Engine users, right? Like being able to reset their electric terrain is a very, very good pick. Oh yeah, Web's aspect with the Rabombi, that's like something that I neglected to mention, but I think that's a very solid pickup. There is a lot of rapid spin in this format, right? Like that is just going to be unable to be blocked, but then you're like creating lines where they have to rapid spin or like have to bring a lot of boots. So that's like something that you obviously always really need to consider. The Hoopa, Psychic Surge, and Prankster. This thing has like such a strong expanding force. Like this thing's special attack stat is nuts. And then Prankster, I'm not that familiar with like Hoopa's support move pool. I can't lie. It's been a minute since I've drafted like Hoopa for anything. So I imagine it gets like screens, right? Like it would probably, I know it gets like Prankster Trick. If there's like things that you want to do with that. I don't know if it gets like Thunder Wave and such, but it seems like a pretty decent like Pokemon overall. Especially when you're just complementing it with Psychic Surge. It's kind of like Amel just had the Hoopa Unbound in the doubles and supported that with Psychic Surge. I think it's like fun to continue that guy on like a little bit, even though like unintentionally. Oh, Hoopa has Destiny Bond too. That's a pretty nice Prankster move, right? That seems like really annoying for a lot of teams to manage, especially if it just comes out of nowhere. That is something like with the Hoopa where they'll know what ability it has right away. Same with the Serena, but like a lot of the Pokemon above it, you don't know what ability it has because they don't activate. Vaporeon next in that line with Magic Guard and Volt Absorb. I really like the Volt Absorb on this one. We were talking a lot about the Hadron Engine users. Vaporeon's a pretty natural answer to like Golden Go, to Latios, which are like some of the better ones. So that's like a really good pick here that I really like with the Vaporeon. And and then Magic Guard on it was just like another solid pick for like the hazards that could be annoying for a lot of the bulkier aspects of this core. And then also it being a wish passer here into with having that fat HP stat, it can actually still pass like productive wishes into Iron Hands and Tinglu, which have some of the highest HP stats in the game. But Porygon's wishes will still be helpful for them. Up next is the 1-point Lycanroc Midnight Anger Shell Sturdy. That's some rocks right there. Although most weeks you probably just put rocks on the Tinglu. But it's nice to have at least a secondary option for a little bit. The one thing that like this team does, I think I wish that it had a little bit better, was the ability to put up hazards. But the Tinglu can just do that every game, right? Like, so you don't have to feel too bad about like not having like good hazards like that, because Tinglu is the most reliable hazard setter in the game. So next, Cinderace. I like the offensive pick of Cinderace here with the Desolate Land and Moxie abilities. I really enjoy using Cinderace, and I think having the Moxie on it is quite nice. I think that it is actually capable of pulling off like a Moxie sweep. And, you know, Libero is a great ability, but also can sometimes feel like a burden, especially on like Sword Stance sets, where you don't want to be like Sword Stance and then your attacking move of choice is like Double Edge or something like that. So I think that the Moxie pick on that can do a lot of damage, or it's like Desolate Land and go crazy, and like Sword Stance and Pyro Ball and like just not have a switch in that isn't Primordial Sea. And then the last pick, Tinglu. That's the thumbnail of this power rankings. I think this Pokemon, Joey put out like, we're doing almost any ability. What Pokemon do you want to see me draft? And I said Regen Tinglu, and here it is. I think this Pokemon is going to be a friggin' nuisance, man. Like, it's just going to come in. You're going to do like good damage to it, and then it just switches, right? Like, this is the bulkiest Regen has ever been, other than like Ho has like pretty comparable bulk to this thing, but like Ho is not allowed, right? Like, this is going to be the best regenerator Pokemon of all time. Maybe if it had like a momentum move, but still, you just go in, you clear your spike, and then you get forced out. Boohoo! You'll keep getting like spikes and like accruing value with the Ruination. There was obviously a lot of strong Pokemon left on the board. Like when I was seeing this draft happen, I thought maybe they were going to go for like the Hisuian Zoroark strategies and be bullies, but I really think the Tinglu fits this team perfectly. It's going to be a bulky game. It probably will take a while, but this team will beat you down and make you unhappy. Not unhappy, but like they'll beat you down, and it'll be a long game that they'll feel pretty confident in the whole time. So that's something where I think I would probably put this team into that playoffs tier. We'll see if CBAD maybe makes me want to change that, and maybe I'll have to move someone out of the playoff tier. But if that's my four, right? Like, we'll move on to these final few picks. Up next, CBAD, Detroit Steel Wings, the SPL, homie, starting off with Iron Moth with Sheer Force and Magic Guard. When I saw Iron Moth picked, I thought it was going to be like Desolate Land, because I think that's typically what it runs, but Sheer Force and Magic Guard, two incredible abilities. I just, because typically Iron Moth's best like form of setup is Fiery Dance, and without that, like if you want to set up offensively, at least like you obviously have agility sets, but Sheer Force getting rid of that setup ability I think can be a bit annoying. But both Sheer Force and Magic Guard lead you to very, very strong outputs of damage. Magic Guard, obviously, you get like your free Life Orb effectively. Sheer Force, you also get Life Orb. You just have to actually consider removing hazards, which you have a Prankster Corviknight. So there's situations where it obviously can be denied, like we're talking about with the Wheezing. But there's also a lot of situations where you can actually remove them. So maybe Sheer Force is an ability that we can consider switching, but I really like the Magic Guard Iron Moth. I think that guy's a pain in the ass. Pecharunt, Fluffy, Earth Eater. I think Fluffy's low-key overkill on this thing. Just like I've done calcs with Pecharunt, just like for standard games, and it already has enough physical defense to do whatever the fuck it wants, right? Like, it doesn't care about anything like that can like damage it from that side. So I think Earth Eater probably just comes most games, but there like are some Pokemon where Fluffy's like annoying. Like Iron Boulder will be hitting it super effectively with like the Zen or the Psycho Cut. But like that maybe is like your fluffy answer. But I think, yeah, most of the time you're just playing Earth Eater and you won't feel too bad. Because also, like, the thing with fluffy is like one of your more important things that you are actually taking a lot of damage from on the physical side is Earthquake. And fluffy doesn't help that. So I might consider changing the fluffy if that was my team. Hisuian Samurott, I think this Pokemon is a scam the more that I've used it. Maybe in almost any ability that'll change my mind, but especially you don't even have sharpness, right? Like adaptability and Primordial Sea. I feel like I would have just kept sharpness on this thing over adaptability. I think the multiplier is just worse. Personally, if you're just going to run like your Razor Shell and your Ceaseless Edge, right? Like I feel like the multiplier on sharpness is just better. So maybe that's something that I would change. Because you also get like the Sacred Sword boost. And then Primordial Sea, interesting pick. Yeah, I'd just rather have sharpness. And 14 seems like a lot for Samurott. I know that's what it typically goes for. But I don't know. I think that this has just been like a Pokemon that's disappointed me. But the spikes on this thing are really important. Because he did kind of neglect his hazards a little bit on this team. Probably just because of the Samurott. But, yeah, I guess Adapt does give you the ability to run, like, those mixed sets a little bit better. But I feel like you want to be clicking Ceaseless Edge. Any turn that you're not clicking Ceaseless Edge with Hisuian Samurott feels kind of bad, in my opinion, just from using it. So, why not make it as powerful as you can? The next pick is Corv with Intim and Prankster. I maybe would have wanted an immunity ability on the Corv. I get Prankster, like Prankster screens. Slow U-turn seems like a very, very nice strategy. But overall, I think that Intim, while nice, makes a lot of sense. Prankster, maybe not. But still just like Corviknight's annoying. And a lot of Pokemon do have like their techs to beat Corviknight. Granted, not a lot of them are running it because there's only one Corviknight. There's also a Skarmory, but like, I don't know. I think Corviknight's going to be probably getting its abilities changed, if it was me at least. Up next, Infernape, Beast Boost, and No Guard. Yeah, this thing seems really nice. I think these are two great abilities for it. Basically, you get your Moxie and your Soul Heart in one with the Beast Boost on Infernape. I think this is a very smart choice. You're not confining yourself to Moxie or to Soul Heart, right? Like, you can go mixed, and No Guard, I also think really helps amplify your special attacking sets, especially with, like, Inferno. I believe Infernape gets Inferno. And the Focus Blast, your special attacks should be doing a lot better. But still, I think that Infernape probably just wants some ability that's a damage multiplier. Because I feel like it's just naturally weak. And No Guard might, and Beast Boost might take it a little bit to get going, right? Like, so I think that overall, there's probably a little bit of work to be done with the Infernape. Yeah, and also, it gets too fast. Typically, yeah, because if you want that offensive boost, right? Most matchups you're going to be, like, wanting to run Jolly Infernape or Timid Infernape, and you just can't. So maybe you, yeah, I think this is going to be a bit of a challenging one to navigate for Seabad with Infernape. But I think it has a lot of potential. But might just want, like, an offensive boost. Guard is next. Psychic Surge, Tinted Lens. Yeah, this seems great. There's going to be a few matchups where, like, I almost like to think of it as, like, you have, like, a greedy ability and a safe ability with this Guard, right? Psychic Surge is your greedy ability. If they don't have, like, a very good specially defensive steel type, you can get away with running Psychic Surge and just clicking Expanding Force. But your safe ability, Tinted Lens, always going to be a very safe option. And being able to just, like, click Moonblast and get the Tinted Lens. Steel types can't come in on you as easily. Yeah, that seems like a very, very solid pick. Jolteon with Hadron and Refrigerate. That seems like a great pick. I've enjoyed my Jolteon usage lately. I think there will be games where just, like, you know, the Bolt Beam combination is a pretty good pick. Teams did, like, I think, try their best to counter Bolt Beam just because there's Bolt Beam Regieleki, Bolt Beam Jolteon, Bolt Beam Iron Hands. There's a lot of Bolt Beam Pokemon that are in this format. But there's just also going to be like matchups where Hadron Engine does enough damage. I wish Pokemon kept like Rising Voltage. I think that would have been like a cool pick for a lot of these like Hadron Engine guys. Granted, like now that's probably making Hadron Engine balanced. If there was a lot of Rising Voltage distribution, I imagine we like wouldn't have allowed Hadron Engine. But yeah, no, this Jolteon, you might call it chalk, but I think the abilities just make sense. The Iron Leaves with Surge Surfer and Sharpness, I also really am fond of those abilities. I think that's how you would get Iron Leaves to work. I think Iron Leaves is going to be challenging to make work, but this is one of the more drip picks that I think I've seen. Up next, Mudsdale with Regen and Water Absorb. That also seems like a very solid Pokemon, very reliable, but I worry not having Stamina will make me kind of disappointed, right? Because like that's what Mudsdale is so good for, is like that Stamina, and not having it. Granted, Regen probably is just like a better ability than Stamina. Promotes a bit of a different playstyle, right, where you want to come in and take hits and like sit there a while with Stamina, whereas Regen you want to kind of be like weaving in and out. But I think it's a pretty solid choice for the Mudsdale. And then Water Absorb also makes sense. We have Double Fire. We're going to want that water resist here because our water resistances are not the best. It's Samurott, Iron Leaves, and now this Mudsdale. We really didn't have like a Scald switch in, which there's not a lot of Scalds, but like there's still Scalds, you know? And then the last pick was Copperajah, Levitate, Steely Spirit. It just makes sense. I don't think Copperajah is very good. I just don't think it has the stats. Yeah, I don't think this Seabed team makes me want to move anyone out of playoffs to put it in playoffs. So I think that'll be how I have it. And now going through the playoffs teams, which teams am I the most fond of those playoffs teams? Things that I really liked for a lot of them are like, what did I feel like the happiest talking about is how I'm kind of going to judge this one. I think that like, and what teams did I notice the most flaws in? Like, I feel like I noticed a good amount of flaws in like Aim's team. So I think he'll stay in the playoffs tier for me. I think that Suave's team, Suave's team felt good just because a lot of his like lower tier picks felt like they were very, very bringable. So I think I'll put Suave up. Shuckle, I think I also had like a lot of gripes with like his lower tier picks especially. So I think I'm going to like leave him down because I think the season will be won and lost on the lower tiers. And I really like Callum's lower tiers as well. So I think that these teams, Suave and Cal, made like some of the best low tier pickups. And that's why I have them higher going into the finals. And then for the actual finals themselves, I guess now just like thinking about it like from a finals perspective, and like if these two teams were to match up, if I accurately got this draw correctly, like what would happen? I think that Hands has a very solid matchup here. I think Crown has a very solid matchup here. And then I think like Mentz has a pretty solid matchup here. So like your big three looks pretty good. And down here, Cinderace, I think he has like some okay Cinderace answers actually. And Tinglu seems really annoying, but going into like Callum's team, the Manaphy seems like a nice pivot in. Potentially can actually like maybe take crown hits decently enough. And it can like come in on Cinderace okay-ish. And you turn out, probably wouldn't want to run Flip Turn into the Desolate Land. And can come in on Tinglu and be okay. Iron Treads, I like for its ability to spin. It's very hard to spin block it with Hoopa because you just die to knockoff, unfortunately. I guess like you can obviously Destiny Bond it away, and that will actually keep your hazards off. But I think that there's like enough play in this team where it can work. And then I just foresee Boulder being a really, really big problem with the Sharpness boosted moves. Sharpness boosted moves pretty much killed the entire team bar Crown. And I think Suave has like good enough early-ish Crown answers for that matchup to be playable in Suave's favor. So in my power rankings, I would have Suave winning his first draft league. I think that's like that would be a great storyline. I'll update my post into the Shuckle Premier League Discord server after this so that folks can see this, and then this will be a VOD on my channel for everyone. But I hope everyone enjoyed these power rankings. Thank you everyone for tuning in. The main matchup overviews will go up Saturdays, and we'll be able to see everyone will be able to see these first initial matchups. Yeah, starting Saturday. So in a few days, I'm gonna like start working on the graphics very shortly after this live stream concludes. Took an hour and a half, almost exactly. So thank you all for hopping on. I'm getting quite hungry, actually. I'm about to go have some dinner. So thank you all for joining me on this final.